Auto recording. Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. Come on in. You are here for an amazing webinar, sponsor webinar with Warren Publishing and Mindy Kuhn. Am I saying that right, Mindy Kuhn? I should have asked you.
Yes, ma'am. That's okay. I
Wonderful.
appreciate the ask. It's better than
Wonderful.
what I do get sometimes. So
Yeah, I just hate to be that person, you know. Um,
you can only imagine with
uh,
that what I get, and some of it is not very nice sounding. So
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. So anyway, I'm glad everyone's here. I'm really excited to introduce Mindy. She was a sponsor for last year's summit, the 2025 summit, and she's coming back this year to sponsor for 2026. So we are so excited to have her do another sponsor webinar for us. I just want to tell you a little bit about Mindy. Mindy Kuhn has over 30 years of marketing, design, and branding experience. She holds photojournalism and journalism graphics degrees from Ball State University and a leadership in publishing certificate from the Yale Publishing Course, Yale School of Management, and has worked in many aspects of advertising, marketing, and branding for companies ranging in size from Fortune 500 to small boutiques. Mindy has extensive experience in the print platform and excels at developing an author's vision into a polished, finished product. Publication design is one of her many specialties, and she has earned many design and publication awards of her work. So that's wonderful. What a great resume.
gosh,
So,
can you just
so
come
happy.
along with me everywhere and just read that along? So it
Yeah,
sounds so
it's a great
so
bio.
fancy when it sounds so good when you read it.
Fantastic.
So
I know, I'd love to know what Fortune 500 companies you've worked for.
we've had I've had several, so yeah. And
Wow.
I did a lot of branding with sororities and fraternities, so that was a lot of fun too. So
Oh, fun. Yeah, that's so
yeah,
cool. Well, we're so happy to have you. And I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I'm just going to pass it along to you and let you do your thing.
sounds good. Thank you. And I don't know if I'm supposed to see anybody in my side of things, but I cannot see faces. So just giving you that heads up in advance. That I can see Amy, but that's about it. So I don't know if I'm supposed to see anybody, but I'm just going to lead with that. Um, but they can see my screen, and that's all you really need to see. So, um, all right. Well, thank you for the introduction. I own Warren Publishing, and I have owned it for 10 years almost. So I'd love to share today um, what what the ins and outs of hybrid publishing are. So I will do a little preface in the beginning by saying this is like hybrid is still kind of in the Wild West aspect a little bit, so that uh, everybody everybody operates a little differently with hybrid. So I will speak hybrid in a general, and then also obviously as specific as we know it. So let's get rolling. Um, and I'm just gonna, in order to know where hybrid fits in, I just want to do a rollover of the different types of publishing. That being said, I understand this is probably not your first webinar. You are more than likely have done an immense amount of research because authors are amazing and they tend to do that. So you may already know this, but essentially there's four types roughly of publishers. We have a traditional publisher, and you will see that listed here, just a few names of some popular ones. These traditional publishers also can be, I don't know if you've watched Younger a few years ago, it was on Netflix. That's about the publishing industry. And I use quotey fingers because it wasn't, but that's traditional publishing based. It's what you imagine publishing to be based on movies. Self-publishing, you probably are familiar with that. Amazon, KDP, Ingram Sparks, Smashwords, Book Baby. These are just a few, and the slides are a few years old. I went in to try to update them, and it looks like those services are still offered to folks who do self-publishing. I think Lulu, I believe, and I'm not sure if they have changed the name. but I know they are a self-publishing service as well. And of course, I've listed a few hybrid as well, along with a vanity press. So there is a distinct difference between vanity presses and hybrid publishing. If I do nothing else today in the next half hour or 40 minutes, I want to make sure I really articulate the differences between the two. Do you see my slide? Samantha is saying, should we see a list? You should be able to see the slide where it has 4 little circles. Can you see that?
Just seeing the intro slide right
Oh,
now.
interesting. Okay, well, thank you. Let me stop sharing and doing another quick share on, I don't know why. Let's try this view and see if that will help.
There it is. I see that.
Okay, thank you. And then I can't see the chats anymore for some reason. Show chat. There we go. Okay. So as I click through, please let me know if it doesn't change again on the next slide. I'll tell you when I switch slides. But if I do nothing else, I want to make sure I'm articulating the difference between vanity press and hybrid publisher. So vanity press is a publisher who charges authors and they do not have a submission process. They accept anything. They make guarantees that you'll automatically be a bestseller, etc. They make a lot of promises. They also could reach out to you directly for publishing. They could send you a note that says, I want to publish with you, and I'll automatically publish your book. So a hybrid, let me go to the next slide because this will start to talk about what hybrid is. Actually, we're going to talk really briefly about traditional, because I think in order to fit hybrid, we're going to go through each model. Okay, so I'm on to the next slide. If you cannot see it, please let me know. But this slide should say, what is traditional publishing? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Eva. So traditional publishing is where the author works with a third-party publishing house to create and release a manuscript as a book. It's what you expect. Traditional publishers will sometimes pay authors in advance against their royalties, not always. This can be as small as a few $100s, or it could be a large advance. Of course, this is very dependent upon the situation, the person, etc. Most traditional will require a literary agent, and a few may accept unsolicited manuscripts. So again, there's a little bit of a range, just like other types of publishing, but these are general. The author must adhere to a schedule proposed by the publisher. So once the author or the publisher acquires it, they're going to set up a schedule and timeline that is pretty tight, and the author basically has to kind of fit within that, typically. The author earns royalties on the percentage of book sales, either net or gross. And again, that dependent upon that particular publisher's policy. Publisher maintains creative control over the process. So this is a big difference between traditional and other publishers, is that traditional often will, will basically have very little room for author input. Not everybody, again, I'll say not everybody because there's always variables, but typically the publisher maintains that control. Authors will grant licensing to their work, which is now the publisher's intellectual property, which basically means they own the rights to that literary work. Publisher maintains and manages financing, so basically they pay for editing, illustration, design, the whole soup to nuts, so to speak, in regards to the publishing process. That is all done by the publisher. If you choose traditional publishing, there are some things that you as an author will want to make sure you are doing. Make sure you're reviewing your contract so you understand the whole scope of the process. Make sure you're querying publishers so that you've researched and follow their submission guidelines, because again, some will accept without an agent, and some will mandate to have an agent. And if you're not an author illustrator, you do not need to submit illustrations. know what you, when it says know your definition of success, the point to that is just know what you are looking for, know where your hard and fast kind of places are for that. Traditional publishing may be a good fit for you if you're willing to exchange the rights to your book for publisher services and industry connections. If you prefer the backing of editorial design team, if you don't have your own distribution channel, and if you're not in a hurry. And I think an additional one is if you don't have a budget that you have kind of set aside, because typically there's not traditional publishers will now more often than not will require you to be involved in marketing. So you'll need a budget on that end for almost any type of publishing. But that being said, you don't have to pay for everything in regards to traditional. Self-publishing. You should see the slides change. And I'm going to allow about 15 minutes at the end too, that I will click over the webinar chat. We'll get any questions to answer. So I'm just letting you know I see things, notes and stuff come through, but we'll answer some questions when it gets to that point. So thank you. All right. Self-publishing, most of you understand what this is. So I want to focus on, again, hybrid. So I'm going to skim over this probably a little quicker than not, but this will just give you a little refresher course in self-publishing. Self-publishing, 100% of royalty capture for the author. Now, of course, that is minus the cost that you have into the book price. So when I say 100% royalty capture, that is usually you've got to take out the cost per book on that once you print them. So let's keep that in mind. You do typically have you will have full creative control because you're finding everything. So you will go out as a self-published author and you are going to find your editor, you're going to find your designer, you're going to find the way you're going to print your books and how to market. Illustrator, if it's children's books, you're going to be responsible to go out and find all of these pieces and parts and finance that. So again, tips, if you choose self-publishing, you want to make sure you do the following. Hire a professional editor with experience in book editing. It's wonderful when you know a teacher and you know some other folks who who have maybe strong in grammar, etc. It's really important, I believe, as a publisher, to have an editor, if you're going to self-publish, who really knows that book industry and is familiar with Chicago Manual of Style. Ask to see previous examples of their work. Ask the editor if they have a working knowledge of Chicago Manual of Style. The style guide is utilized in that industry. So you definitely want to make sure your editors know Chicago Manual of Style, because that is the industry guideline. You also want to have a professional designer who understands book design and has experience designing books and covers specifically. So there is a difference between a designer who can design for a poster or a marketing piece and book design. So just giving you heads up that as you're looking for these designers and editors, you want to make sure they actually know that industry, or they may have trouble on the hind end with uploading those files. So the final is self-publishing may be a good fit if you have contacts within the creative industry. So if you already know editors or designers, if you happen to have your own distribution channel and you're not relying on some publisher support for the sales, maybe you're a public speaker or you have a large following, and that way you have the back of the room sales already kind of built into your process. Finally, let's jump to hybrid. That's what we want to see. So I will slow down a bit here because this is what we wanted to really get into, is what is hybrid publishing, right? So hybrid publishing is a cross between self-publishing and the traditional publishing models. So it's it really kind of combines the best of both worlds, I think. There is a financial investment from the author in this process. So there is that component. However, hybrid publishers, as part of that guideline of what hybrid publishers are, we should, and they should be expected to have a selection process. That's what hybrid publishers are. If they don't have a selection process and they just accept everybody who submits, then that should be a flag to you to be a bit concerned, or just do a little bit more research. So you want somebody that's part of hybrid, is that you are reviewing the submissions that you get, and you're only accepting a certain percentage. And we accept only about 20% of what's submitted. Authors retain the rights to the work. Again, that's another part of the process, that the authors will retain the rights. So you own that literary rights. What you're doing in the publishing process is you're kind of lending it to us as a publisher on paper, so to speak, legally. You're saying, hey, you can go ahead, edit my work, speak on my behalf, so to speak, with getting it launched, but it's lending versus owning rights. We're just utilizing them to be able to work with it, to publish the book in your name, so to speak, but you own those rights. Authors do have input in editing, marketing, creative process. So the way we operate is we include typically a developmental edit, a copy edit, and a proofread with different editors. So you get 3 different editors in that process. Again, depending on the work and the type of book, etc. But that is a typical. And then the author gets to see and engage with the requested edits in between each round, so to speak. So you are going to see what the editor suggests. You're going to have an opportunity to make those changes, to ask questions, engage in that process. Same thing when it comes to the creative side. You'll be able to say, hey, I'm thinking, I love the idea of this type of thing for my cover. And what we do, we'll take the conversation and we will either blow it up, so to speak, and kind of bring it to that next level, give you some other options that we think may be stronger, or but we're working together in that. So, and then the same thing on the marketing end, we include marketing support as well, and our marketing director is working with you to kind of create that dream list of who you want to reach out to, how that marketing is done, and then we do some and you do some. So that is how kind of our process is working. Royalties are split between the author and the publisher, and part of the kind of guidelines is that it should be at a higher percentage than a traditional model. And then the hybrid publishers, now this is where it can be a little different. Some hybrid publishers have an additional cost to include editing. Some do not. Like, I think that's where there is a little loose as in the guidelines of, we include that because I want to operate as close to that traditional side of things as I can. So our editing is included in that price point of the contract. Some do not. So that's just something to talk about if you're doing that. And the same thing with marketing support. Some include, some do not. We do. Again, that's what we have found to be something that people have asked for, is to include some of that marketing in there. But keep in mind, we, again, are a publisher and not a publicist. So often authors choose to add a publicist as well if they need some additional support in different ways. We rolled through that. Hybrid publishing, make sure you do the following. So if you're interested in hybrid, here's some questions. You want to make sure you do some research and that you ask the questions for that potential publisher so that you understand the expectation on both ends. I think often that's the big big problem, maybe problem is a big word, but the potential issue can be authors don't fully understand what hybrid is, so they're coming in with a different expectation maybe than the publisher is doing or can provide. So I think as long as you have those communication points, it makes a smoother process for you throughout publishing just so you know what you're understanding. So make sure you can have communication, have questions answered, have a point of contact through that process with whoever you choose to publish with. Make sure you're reviewing your contract and you understand who's responsible for every aspect in the process. Make sure you research the company and the products they publish. And then again, knowing the goals as an author, what are you trying to accomplish with your project? So for example, some authors, they would like to sell 1 million books, and they're coming in and saying, this is going to be a bestseller, and I'm going to send 1 million books. Whenever I have an email from somebody and they are interested in connecting with us, and they start by saying, I want to share with you the best book in the whole world, which has actually been said to me, best book in the whole world, and it's going to sell millions of copies. That's concerning, because then they're coming in with an expectation that's very difficult for any publisher, quite frankly, to achieve. It's a big market out there. It's very saturated, and this is one of those industries that everybody gets a piece of a pie, and it can be very little monetarily for everybody to achieve. So just something to think about. What's your purpose? Some people, they just want to get the book out. They want to have a legacy for their family, friends, etc. Some people have a good message. They just want to make sure that message is shared. Some are speakers and they want to utilize it in the back of the house. I think, to sell it when they're speaking, they want to be able to sell it in the back of the room. So there's all different reasons as to why people choose to publish a book. I think it really helps you as an author to know why you're publishing and to know which model you think seems interesting to you, so you know kind of where to do the most research at. If you're interested in self-publishing on that side, it's always nice to check out hybrid as well, because I think I'm getting a little carried away from myself. My goodness. I think if you are thinking of self-publishing, it couldn't hurt to look at the hybrid side of the world as well. Hybrid publishing may be a good fit if you would like to be more directly involved in the process, but don't know where to begin. You're looking for a partner to lead you through that journey, and you don't have a high amount of social media followers or a strong level of marketing understanding, and you need a partner to help kind of walk you through that. All right, let's jump. Advantages of hybrid publishing. The engagement in the process. So as an author, this is your baby. This is your work. Some people have been working on their manuscript for 10 years, and they still don't want to just hand it over and not have any engagement in the final result. So hybrid is great because that allows the author to be engaged in that process a bit more than maybe if you were working with a traditional. And again, I'm saying that in a ballpark. Hybrid, you do retain the rights to your work. I have a couple of books that have been optioned for movies, one in particular that's in process. And the neat part about that is they're working on trying to get that negotiated. And she had said originally to me, well, I feel like maybe I need to look for a traditional publisher before going into this. Maybe it's going to be more appealing to the studios. And I told her, that sounds good. However, I think it sounds good in theory. I think it's a bad idea, because once you get to actually having the movie ready to go, you own the rights to your book now. Hold on to those as long as possible, because once you sell them to a traditional publisher, you don't have as much to negotiate with the studios. Sometimes studios want to buy the movie rights and the literary rights all at the same time. If you own those rights, you can be able to package those too. So that's something really nice to think about if you do have some connections in that industry. Owning the rights, you can be able to sell them potentially all at one time if that helps you get a better deal with the studio. Bigger percentage of royalty payments than with other publishing models typically. and this is outside of the self-publishing, obviously self-publishing, you're doing it yourself, so you're going to get a higher percentage. Marketing support from industry professionals, hybrid, like I said, with us, we have that marketing support side. So you're not just trying to figure it out. I think that's hard for a lot of first-time authors. Teresa had made a comment in chat saying I was such a novice when I self-published. Absolutely. Like that's most authors, especially with their first book, really don't know what they don't know really what they're doing, and it's understandable that that's a big industry trying to figure out. It's nice when you are able to pair with somebody in that hybrid industry, because that's what we do. We know the industry. Things are always changing. Granted, like it's as soon as you figure one thing out, something happens and it modifies the industry a bit. So there is a swinging, a swinging change all the time. But overall, this is what we do. So we pay attention to those things. We are proud of providing professional quality that is on par with traditional publishers. That again, overall, some do better quality than others, but overall, that's again the purpose of what we do, is to get that traditional quality with editing, design, etc. And then I think the last point is probably the most important for a lot of authors, is you're not alone in this process. We're your hand holder through that from start to finish. So it's nice that you're not navigating this on your own. Vanity, I talked a little bit about that. Vanity is basically a service. It used to be called Vanity. Now it's basically a self-publishing or a publishing service. Some are better than others. Again, a publishing service that helps an author self-publish, but that's not bad in itself, because there's lots of folks out there who can support an author and they aren't necessarily considered vanity. Vanity is the one that makes you require us to purchase a specific number of books. They charge extra for a lot of extra things. They require everything up front to be paid, like ahead of, even like for us, we break things out payment wise based upon what you're doing at the time. I think the no shared royalties is a huge one between vanity and hybrid. I think there is an aspect that hybrid does take a percentage of shared royalty, but you get a higher percentage of things. The actual publishing is done under the author's own account. So if they'll make you have an Amazon account, an Ingram account, you upload the files, that's also vanity. They accept every book that comes their way. Again, that was something that was a thing to pay attention to, and they may reach out to you directly. The vanity publishing, make sure you are vetting the services, ask the questions. The same thing kind of goes with everybody. So I'm going to skip over some of that just because it's generally you want to make sure you're asking questions. You are going to assume all risks and costs. I'm seeing some questions come through. So I'll answer these, Heidi and Angela, in just a second. But essentially, you can see what these last couple of questions are. I want to make sure, notes are. I want to make sure I have time to answer your questions. So let's jump ahead. Publishing questions you should consider. So I think this is a good one. No matter where you are with being an author. What's your intention or vision for your book? What do you hope to accomplish? What type of book do you want to be published? What type of book, how many copies of your book do you want? That's just knowing going into the contract. Like if you say I need to have 500 copies, like, just know your expectations. What distribution are you looking for? So I may be able to answer this question for Heidi at the same time. Hybrid publishing typically does include distribution. It depends on what they include as a company specific to how that some will include distribution only through a certain source. I can speak for us directly that we load our books through Ingram, so it is available in that Ingram database that bookstores can access. It also typically goes into that feed, so anybody like Amazon, etc., wants to pull directly from Ingram, they can. Oftentimes, we'll post or we'll launch a book, print, etc., certain like soft cover copies also directly on Amazon so that we can get certain attention that you don't always get from algorithms by not publishing directly. So there's just some extra things that some publishers do to get a little more visibility by publishing in a couple of places. But most should include some type of distribution. So Heidi, I hope that answers it, and I can ask more specific question or answer more specific question in a second. Bev, how does hybrid help you sell? I can answer that in just a second when we get to the question. So know if you want or need an agent. So if you're confirmed that you only want to work on traditional side of things, then make sure you are accounting for that and start to search for an agent, because that could also pose another challenge. If you can't find an agent, you may not be able to hit that route. Now, granted, again, if the traditional is working through an agent, not everybody does. How involved do you want to be? Some authors want very involved, some don't want to be involved at all. Just kind of know where that is. And how do you define success? I think you should know that, like I said earlier, are you only going to be successful if you have that top level of sales? Then maybe you should not publish, because that's not realistic for a lot of folks. Do you have finances? Is your manuscript ready? I think if it's ready, I think that's a question too, to talk to the publisher and find out how developed it needs to be before you submit. Like, know those guidelines for your publisher as well. Who's going to buy your book? What's your demographic, your ideal reader? You need to know that before you submit to anybody, hybrid or not. How will your book reach its audience? Again, some of these questions are worth asking for you to ask that potential publisher. So I am going to, I think, and that's just me, so I don't want to sit on my face. So we're going to leave that publishing question, so we don't have to just have that slide of me up there. But I do see enough questions come through that I'm going to spend the next little bit going over those. So please feel free. I'm going to back into the comments and start asking questions. Okay, bear with me. Cher, I see you. I think Outskirts Press may be out of business. I'm not sure. Okay. Cher says for her her first book, nonfiction, written in 1973, she received a healthy advance. Sadly, due to life's needs, I didn't write again until my children were grown. I had a positive experience when I was 29 years old, but much changed in publishing. It did in the next 40 years when she wrote again. So I will say the one thing to think about, there's the last big shift really in publishing was around COVID. There was a before COVID and an after COVID, much like everything in the world, I feel like. But publishing did have some changes because bookstores also buy a little different now than they did. And I think that that's something that kind of modifies the industry a little bit, is they have to watch that side of things. I also happen to own a bookstore, wine bar, restaurant, which is fantastic, but I did it so that I can see how people are buying and be part of the book, like the booksellers, Facebook groups, etc. And it's been helpful so I can see how they're buying, how they're selling, and what they're interested in. So that has been kind of interesting to see how they work with local authors. But that may be its own webinar. So Samantha says she's traditionally published with a small press and did not have to have an agent. That's emphasizing that point. Yes, you do not have to have an agent. Always, some do. Heidi wanted to know, do most hybrid publishers post the book on Amazon and/or bookstores? And I think I answered that question. Typically, they do some type of distribution. I would assume a lot of them are probably posting on Amazon as well, whether it's directly through their distributor or through Amazon directly. They've got some type of, but those are questions to ask that particular. But in a general sense, I'm going to say they have to include some type of distribution typically. Angela had a very bad experience with what would be deemed vanity, lots of promises, none realized. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is ask questions. And that's unfortunate. I'm so sorry to hear that because that's hard, especially when it's your book baby. How does hybrid help you sell, marketing, etc.? Again, I can speak for us because this is one of those angles that everybody's a little different. Some hybrids may include more or less. Some may not include any marketing. I think that is always something you want to ask. What we do, I have a marketing director, and she will connect with the author, and they make a list of your dream list, basically, of stores, media that you may want to connect with, things that are in your hometown. She's got lots of info that she will give you as well. Marketing is always a partnership. So we do some things and you do some things. It's just like having a child and putting it in a closet. If you're not engaged, it's not going to thrive. So if you have something that you aren't speaking about as an author and excited about, people will notice that and they will not be excited to buy your book, etc. So what we do is we also provide bookmarks. I provide a poster for you to use for signing. So I have some marketing materials that we give you. We give you a sell sheet or a one sheet, which is something that you would utilize when you and the marketing director would utilize as you're connecting with stores. It provides information and buying details about the book. Our people also make calls to different stores as well, and they're a point to have conversations. So some authors are speakers and have questions and needs related to that. Some authors are children's authors, so they want a different, every marketing is a little different depending upon what is necessary. So again, ask that question as you're vetting some of these publishers, but that's what we specifically have. And there's more, but it's all outlined in the contract. That's essentially kind of a nutshell glaze over. We've got a list of things that we include. If you have self-published a book already, can you republish it under a hybrid? So oftentimes, yes. I think the big thing is always they'll want to provide a new ISBN because the ISBN is associated to the publisher. So if you, even though you own the rights to the book, you're, again, when I say lending, when we have when we load the book with an ISBN, the ISBN is under the publisher's name. So if you ever choose to republish it later, you'll use a new ISBN as well, take off the branding from that hybrid company, and then you can republish it in your way. The opposite. So when we look at books that are submitted to us that have been previously published, whether it's through another publisher and you own the rights as the author, or through self-publishing mode, I always evaluate to say, is it something we can do better? Can I give you a better cover? Can I give you better editing? I don't want to. I want to make sure you're getting something for the cost on that contract. I don't just say, oh, sure, bring it on. We'll just publish it directly like it is. It has to be something. I will always run it through our process. Maybe it's a children's book and it could benefit by having, a little more engaging and stylized illustrations. we have brokers that we use who do books for big publishers, the big five. They illustrate for like Hallmark and some other card companies. So they understand how to make things a little more stylized and have some a little pizzazz to it. So that may be something too that we look at if it's submitted to republish, is what can we do to benefit and to make it worth the investment in that process with us. So that's always something we look at when people submit to us. But we do, oftentimes, very rarely do I say we can't find something to better, because on a minimum it's editing, on a maximum it's editing the new cover. Like, we do all of that because the cover has to be done with the ISBN that we provided anyway. Let's see. So Heidi wants to know, the writers who publish with you, do you become the agent? No. I'm not your agent specifically, because I don't farm it out to other publishers. I am your publisher. So I will work with you in that end. An agent is going to reach out to other publishers and work on trying to sell it, that type of thing. So I am not your agent. Now, I am your agent in the sense that I can speak for you as a representative when we launch the book, that type of thing. But I am not acting to sell your book to other publishers. If I publish with a vanity press and it's on Amazon, when I get the rights back, can I come to you? Yeah, I think I hit that. If you get the rights back and you have that kind of backing to say I own the rights, absolutely. You can bring it to us, submit it via our website under the submission tab. You can send me a note and say, hey, I'm doing this. Just want to give you a heads up. Those kinds of things. And we can have those conversations. Some hybrid publishers just hand you a sell sheet. Can authors use their own ISBN with your company? No, Linda, they cannot, because again, your ISBN is tied to that publishing company. So I buy them by the literal truckload. So we will load a new ISBN, new barcode, etc., with that new look that we do for your book. So when you come to us, I'm going to give you that fresh look, a new, like I said, new edit, new cover typically. So because there's all those changes anyway, and you're working with somebody who's not you, that ISBN legally needs to be changed. If you were doing it yourself, again, in self-publishing, you could use that ISBN unless you change a certain percentage of your content. Then you need to tie in a second ISBN, because your ISBN is tied to that look at that time, if that makes sense. So all sorts of fun stuff. Can you give us a glimpse of how you determine the cost to publish with you? Every deal different. Does it depend on the type of book? Yes and no. So we have a range, and typically we have a range that the books kind of fall within. Every hybrid publisher does some type of pricing. Either they do a package and they say you pick this package. We do not do that. I do a range, so I custom dependent. So I'll give you a little more information on that. For example, let's say it's between $7,000 and $11,000. Essentially, if you come in and it's a children's book and I need illustrations, which is a huge part of that process and cost-wise, it's super expensive. It may be more. It may not be the top of the line, but it may be more like a $8,000 process, because those illustrations just really take up a big part. If the illustrations are needed and the book is really rough and we need to add some extra story development, which we can help you do, then that would be that's where some of that pricing goes higher. If something comes into us and let's say it's a lower page count and it's a poetry book and or a fiction novel, and it's been already edited with development, then I think you just price point. We may not need a copy or a developmental edit, so we price accordingly on that. So there is a range, and it depends on the type of book. how much is necessary to kind of polish, etc. So you're where you are in that writing process. So I hope that helps. Hi, Amy. How are we
Hi,
doing?
good, good. So I just letting you do your thing going through the chat. There were a lot of questions in the chat. We do have a few in the Q&A box as well. So if you want me to field those to you,
Sure.
yeah,
Let me grab Linda's last one, and then we'll do the Q&A
sure,
box. I
yeah, then
didn't
just
see
do another one
those, so
in.
thank you.
Sure.
Linda, how can you describe the different editing services? So everything is included editing wise. So we will tell you what we feel like is necessary unless you come to us and say, I need some extra coaching, that type of thing. Developmental edit is going to be looking at your arc of the book, looking at how things develop. It's think of it like a funnel. Your developmental is broader, then your copy edit is a little tighter because you're looking at grammar and copy, things, typos, etc., structure. And then your proofreading happens after your layout and design, and you're just looking for anything funky that may come through. No, developmental edit is not the same as line editing. Those are two different things that we have that we include, three different editors. So line editing is a copy editing. That's what that would be. That's more of that middle ground. And developmental editing is just kind of a broad stroke. We're going to make sure that you're not introducing a character here, never mentioning them again here. Annette, thank you. I love Katie Wells, and sorry, I'm reading it. She just launched a children's book with
Oh
us, and
yeah, Kate,
it's awesome. So,
that's
um,
so cool.
throw me the other questions that you may have.
Sure, sure. Okay, so Glenda asked, she's saying, I'm finding it hard to find a publisher who will accept my books as I have intended them to be published. Now I have a publisher who wants to give me a contract for just one chapter of my books and wants to charge me £5,700. I am concerned that by the time they publish my full collection of 5 chapters, it will cost way too much. So it's not really a question, it's sort of a statement of what they're
Uh,
going
I
through.
think that's a good statement to kind of say what the problem is.
Uh,
I think I would say keep looking because, again, not knowing now, sometimes people's intention to be published is not necessarily what the market will support. So you may say, oh, this is how I intended it to be, but it may be one of those that the publishers are, if you're starting to see a lot of publishers saying, I'm not interested in doing it that way, there may be a reason market wise. So be open to hearing that. However, not knowing how many pages are in one chapter and what that means, I feel like it's okay to search around a little bit more. Don't jump on the first publisher who sounds interested in it. And £5,700, I'm going to assume is not too far from dollar conversion in that sense that it does sound pretty expensive. And one chapter, I'm not sure what your page count is, but that seems kind of high for that. But I think ultimately I would say keep asking and checking on other publishers. There's going to be, or worst case scenario, and that's not necessarily worst case, it's just a better fit maybe for you to self publish.
Good point. Good point. Okay, Teresa's asking, local publications such as the Seattle Times, in my case, generally won't review or promote self-published books, but what about hybrid books? Are local newspapers more likely to promote?
Yes. And for example, one of our books just was in Martha Stewart Living's online listicle things of like, well, it's not a listicle, it was a setting the table, like top tips on how to set the best table or something like that. And one of our authors had a bit, and they had a link to the book there. So I mean, that's Martha Stewart Living. So if they include things for hybrid publishers, then yeah. I think the key is, are you New York Times, their bestseller list is typically not pulling hybrid publishers. I think it's stupid, but so that's the one thing but reviews, you should be able to find reviews on all sorts, especially local media. I have not had any problems with people if they may not pull it for other reasons, but they aren't necessarily, that's not one of the reasons, if that makes sense.
Good to know.
Bev had a question. Do you have a special genre, and how long from submission to publishing? Typical submission to publishing, 10 to 12 months is a, we were trying to do it less, and we just found that it tended to be that time. By the time you allow enough time in between the editing back and forth and the polishing and the time to do some marketing stuff, dependent upon whether it's illustrated or not. But, and as far as a special genre, we do most genres. I mean, I do more than I don't do. I don't typically do an urban fiction, which is a little more like graphical, and I don't do erotica, but most of the rest I do. I've done cookbooks, business books, fiction, nonfiction, middle grade, children's books, all the norms. Anything else that you have?
Yes, I have a couple more. Well, Glenda said in that response to the 5,700 pounds question, she said she will be getting in touch with you to see
Sure.
if you can give her some advice.
Happy to. And we work with authors all over the country, or all over the world, actually, just because of, again, holding your own rights. It's nice because then we don't have to worry about contracts that are specific to certain countries. And so that's a nice one. But yeah, just I'm happy to answer questions for folks too. If they want to shoot me an email with a question, I can do that.
Dr. Karen is asking, would you be able to give an estimate on the call?
For a specific,
yeah, she had a specific page count that she had.
No, and the only reason, as I mentioned earlier, there's so many variables in, I gave that range, which is about normal between, like I said, 9 and 11, give or take, but it depends if it's been edited previously, what that content looks like. So what happens is when it's submitted, my editor-in-chief will, and her acquisition group will look at it, they'll read it, they'll evaluate it, they'll kind of see, okay, it's how much extra fluff does it need? Is it pretty solid? And so once they get it to look at, then we'll be able to give you, if it's something we're interested in, we give you that contract. And then there's no tide. I mean, just because we send somebody a contract doesn't mean they have to sign, that just kind of outlines what we would do with them. So no, as far as specific quotes, I can do that range, and that until we see things come in, I have a hard time being able to really pinpoint until my editor looks at it.
Good to know. Linda asked again, does your ISBN have to be from the country that you live in? The one you provide, I
That's a good one. The one I do is US ISBN. So I will pull a US ISBN because that's where we are based out of. Now, if you are in another country and choose to self-publish, then that may be a research point for you out of that particular country. I know that the ISBN I pull on the US market for the books that we publish here, because we are the publisher in the US, we can sell it all over the world with that ISBN, if that makes sense. So through like Ingram, the Ingram resource option that we utilize. So we don't have to go out and pull separate ISBNs in other countries. Now, if you are in another country and you are publishing out of that country only, etc., then that's maybe a research point on that for you as if you're going to self-publish type of thing.
Okay, I think Linda said she's from Canada, so that would be like you said.
I think, yeah, and it depends where you publish. Your ISBN should be associated to you as the publisher. So if you're, again, if she's publishing out of Canada and she is going to self-publish, then she may want to research that. If she's going to work with somebody else and they're publishing out of their standard country, then they're fine with pulling the ISBN from their country, from my understanding.
Okay, more questions coming in. So
I know. And you tell me time-wise on when I need to stop. 5 minutes, perfect. Yeah. School market, as in book fairs. Book fairs are funny because, and that, again, that can be its own like seminar as well. But book fairs, Scholastic pretty well owns that market. There are others that do it. And so others have the option sometimes to buy those books. But that being said, sorry, I'm multitasking because somebody wanted, there you go. Is that Cindy, is this the one that you wanted? Maybe not. Okay, sorry. So book fairs, yes and no. I think the key is we've gotten them in schools, but not always a book fair. Like there's Scholastic owns those, and oftentimes if you're at the Scholastic book fairs, you see that they literally have, published by Scholastic. So I think some of that depends a little bit on the book fair company. I'm trying to get everybody's the other one.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Specialties,
I'm gonna
specific.
click through trying to see which one. Hybrid advantages. Okay, I've rolled through all of them.
She's just there.
Which
Yeah.
which one, honey?
Yeah, just say which one it was.
This one? This is the vanity. This one? Well, we'll let her tell us if I if okay. Any others that I have question-wise? I'm trying to make sure I answer all the
Yeah,
all
I
the
think you
things.
grabbed the ones in the chat that you saw,
Okay.
except for that
I
one.
tried to, yes.
But go with hybrid publishing. That's the the one that tells the difference between
Vanity and
vanity and
hybrid.
hybrid, it says. If there's
Okay, let me. There's the
okay,
There's the
yeah.
vanity details. Yes. Okay. So she says yes. I think we landed on it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
here we go.
And what you'll find, if nothing else, you're very welcome. What you'll find, if nothing else, is the fact that publishing has a Goldilocks effect, essentially. There is a little something for everybody, and to find the right fit and the right bit for you, that's where the questions come into play. So I think that I think the biggest bit is knowing your book, knowing your market, and knowing your goals as an author. And once you do that, then you can try. And if you know a little bit enough about what the different types of publishing are, then you can know kind of what your goals are. Like if you have zero budget, then then it's going to be hard to do anything other than a traditional, and if you've got no budget at all. So I think that's something to think about. Translation services, good question. It depends. Like, so when we publish our book, we typically, now again, depends on the type of book, but most of the books we'll do a hardcover, a soft cover, and other than children's books, I do an ebook. I don't usually do an ebook for a children's book. And and that's in an English version. Sorry, it threw me for a second because I lost my train of thought. We have done books in Spanish. I actually did a book in Icelandic, which is kind of very specific. But I had an author who he basically had a soccer team that he was sponsoring in Iceland, and so he had somebody translate it, and then we published it in Iceland. And so they bought a set amount of books for this particular. So there was an end goal on why we published in Iceland, because they wanted to have a specific, something to give to these kids, etc. But we have worked with translation folks for Spanish. Oftentimes, our authors who do it in Spanish tend to have those contacts as well. The biggest thing is we need to get it edited as well. Once it's been translated, we need to have an editor edit the Spanish version also, because there's things that can be extra. So long story short, it's an option. It's a conversation point, but How far out is our publishing schedule? We are booking for next year now. So there's nothing. I also don't like to publish really at the end, the last quarter. I'm still signing folks now for, it takes about 12 months. And so they can get started 10 to 12 months. They can get started in the editing process now, et cetera. It's not going to launch until later next year as it is. So we are open for continuous. We don't have, some folks have a set timeline that they're open for submissions. We have a rolling submission acceptance or at least review process. So we're open for that at any point. So at least to be submitted.
Good to know.
Okay, we made it 1
Yep.
minute after.
I'll just throw in really quick as we say our goodbyes, if you have any criteria for selecting the books that you like to publish. I know that's something that people like to know when they submit.
I feel like, I like good works regardless. And I think I am not a fantasy reader, but we do fantasy because that's a popular genre and that's what, other folks like to read. So I guess my point to even bringing that up is just because it's something that I may think is great, it doesn't mean it's going to limit us on accepting. So the things we look for is like a creative book, something that's maybe a little different, something that other books that may not big publishers may not be interested in that because it's not what everybody is reading, if it makes sense. So I'm open to books that represent populations and in general, like we all want to be seen in books. So I think and creative stories, if it's a children's book, etc. So I think if you've got a book that you're interested in, you're working on, and whether it be your story as a memoir or business book or whatever, like we do all sorts. So it's not, I wouldn't worry about, if it's something that we are interested in, if it's something that you feel strongly about and you're interested in submitting for review, do it. You can always check out my website. We have all sorts of books that we publish on there as well. And you can just see some of the different things. So, yeah, if it's not there, always ask a question. Hey, does this sound like something interesting to you? But,
right. And
if it's well done.
We have a sponsor offer for you as well. I believe, is that still going on?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'll put it in the chat, just make sure everyone has it. You're doing, yes, it expires December 2025.
It's the end of the year, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was 10% off if we accept it. Of course, Vanity, we would accept everything. We are not Vanity. So it has to be submitted. If it's something we accept, then that would come into play and we would give you that discount. So just giving you heads up that, doesn't mean that we're going to accept everything, but if you do,
right,
that's how it applies.
Great. I'll put the link in the chat. Sure. And that way, and they can access your,
And I hope it was helpful. I talk really fast and I tried to get through all the stuff so that I would rather just sit and answer questions because,
yeah, that's more fun.
Why not? I know, right? But I feel like you have to know what questions to ask. So at least giving those other slides, hopefully will give a place to give some questions to kind of jump in with. And if there's any other questions that come in, I am always welcome, or you're always welcome to send an email and I can at least give you my 2 cents. So.
Sure. Can we share your email address as well? Because I think someone's asking. Otherwise, they can get in touch with us and we can send it.
I am going to give you the general. I can't spell apparently today. info@warrenpublishing.net is probably the first round to get to me. And then I watch that mailbox. I also have Mindy@warrenpublishing.net, but I do both of the mailboxes. So.
Okay, well, I think everybody definitely has ways to get a hold of you now because I'm sure they have lots and lots of questions for you. And thank you so much for being here, Mindy and Warren Publishing. And thank you so much for sponsoring Women Publishing Summit last year and this year. And we're looking forward to seeing you again in March.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate y'all.
All right, bye everyone.